Have you ever felt upset because of something someone said or did? Maybe a friend criticized you, a colleague ignored your effort, or a stranger said something that hurt you. Most people let these moments control their emotions, ruin their day, and even affect their confidence. But here's the truth. Most of the time, it's not about you at all. People act based on their own struggles, fears, and mindset, not because of your value. Imagine if you could stop letting others' words or actions dictate your mood. Imagine feeling calm, confident, and in control no matter what happens around you. In this video, you're going to learn exactly how to do that. You'll discover how to recognize your emotions before they take over, question why you feel attacked, and focus on your own intentions instead of worrying about others' opinions. You'll see how to handle criticism, release resentment, and respond with awareness and choice. By the end, you'll have practical tools to stay strong, peaceful, and in control of your life. This isn't theory. This is real, everyday psychology that changes how you think, feel, and act. Chapter 1. Recognize your emotions before others' words affect your mood. Understanding your emotions is the first step to taking control of your life. Every day, people say things that can touch a nerve, make us angry, or make us feel small. When that happens, most of us react instantly. We feel offended, upset, or hurt, and we don't even stop to ask ourselves why. The truth is, nothing anyone says or does can hurt you unless you allow it to. The first step in not taking things personally is recognizing your emotions before anyone else's words have a chance to control you. Emotions are signals. They tell us how we are experiencing the world, how our mind is interpreting actions, and how our body is responding. They are not enemies, but guides. If you ignore them or let them run unchecked, they can take you down a path you don't want to go. Anger, frustration, anxiety, or sadness are all natural responses, but the key is to notice them before they dictate your reaction. When someone says something critical or disrespectful, the first reaction is almost automatic. That surge of heat in your chest, the tightness in your stomach, the quickened heartbeat, that is your body signaling something. Those signals are your emotions speaking. The power comes when you pause and observe those emotions. Recognize that you are feeling angry, hurt, or defensive. Admit it to yourself. That simple act of acknowledgement changes everything. When you say quietly in your mind, "I am feeling hurt right now," you create space between the stimulus and your response. That space is where choice lives. You can decide to act from wisdom rather than impulse. You can decide to respond in a way that serves you rather than reacting in a way that feeds the problem. Most people never do this. They are slaves to their reactions. They let someone else's words, actions, or moods dictate how they feel. And every time they do that, they give away their power. Every time someone else gets to determine your emotions, you lose control over your life. Recognizing your emotions first means taking back that control. It's not about suppressing feelings. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about seeing what is happening inside you, understanding it, and then choosing how to respond. Take a moment to reflect on the physical sensations of your emotions. Notice the tension in your shoulders, the clenching of your jaw, the shallow breathing. These are not just random reactions. They are your body's way of telling you that your mind is interpreting a threat. The threat may not even be real. Someone might be rude because they are stressed or tired. Someone might criticize you because they are insecure. Their words are about them, not about you. Recognizing your emotions before you respond allows you to separate yourself from the heat of the moment. It allows you to see the situation clearly and respond with clarity and calm. Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself. Most of the time, the reason we take things personally is because we are believing a story that our mind is creating. They must think I am incompetent. They are trying to hurt me. They don't respect me. These stories are not facts. They are interpretation. Emotions are the fuel that feeds these stories. When you feel angry, your mind immediately constructs a scenario that justifies that anger. When you feel hurt, your mind constructs a story that validates that pain. Recognizing your emotions early is the way to intercept these stories before they spiral out of control. There is also a deep sense of freedom in understanding your emotions. When you can say, "I feel upset, but I am in control of how I act," you step into a place of power. You step into a place where you no longer need approval, validation, or agreement from anyone else to maintain your inner peace. This is not arrogance, it is mastery. It is the discipline of knowing yourself and refusing to be manipulated by external circumstances. Begin by practicing mindfulness. Pay attention to the way you feel during interactions. Notice the rising tension, the quick thoughts, the emotional impulses. The more you practice, the quicker you will notice your emotions before they take over. You will catch yourself before snapping back, before overreacting, and before letting someone else's negativity become your burden. This practice does not happen overnight. It requires patience, observation, and repetition. Like any skill, the more you work on it, the stronger it becomes. There is also a psychological truth you cannot ignore. Every emotion you feel is temporary. Anger, sadness, hurt, and frustration all pass with time. They are waves, not permanent states. Recognizing your emotions is like learning to surf those waves, instead of being dragged under by them. When you notice the wave rising inside you, you can ride it consciously instead of drowning in it. You can let it pass without letting it define you or dictate your actions. An important technique is labeling your emotions. Name what you feel. Say quietly, "I am feeling frustrated," or "I am feeling hurt." That simple act of labeling reduces the emotional intensity. It creates distance between you and the emotion. Your brain recognizes that the emotion is being observed, and observation alone diminishes the power of the emotion. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence. Recognizing your emotions first and labeling them is the first step in not taking things personally. Another critical point is understanding the source of the emotion. Ask yourself, "Why am I feeling this way?" Often, you will discover that your emotions are tied to expectations or beliefs. Perhaps you expected someone to treat you differently, or perhaps you believe criticism is a threat to your worth. Recognizing the emotion allows you to explore the underlying belief and decide if it is true, useful, or necessary. Most of the time, the beliefs fueling our hurt are not facts, but assumptions. Identifying them gives you the power to change them. Physical awareness also plays a role. Take a breath. Slow down your heartbeat. Relax your muscles. Your body responds faster than your mind. If you act on the physical sensation of being upset without awareness, you will likely react impulsively. By calming your body first, you create a mental space to think clearly. Recognizing your emotions is as much about sensing your body as it is about understanding your mind. Practice small steps daily. Start with minor interactions where you might feel offended or judged. Notice your feelings, name them. Breathe and pause. Observe how the emotion arises and fades. See how your response can be calm, thoughtful, and constructive. With repeated practice, this becomes natural. Soon, you will notice that you are not as affected by other people's words. You will begin to feel a steady sense of confidence and inner peace. Remember, recognizing your emotions is not about controlling other people. It's about controlling yourself. You cannot change what others say or do. You cannot change how others think or behave. But you can change how you respond. That is where freedom lies. That is where power lies. And that power begins the moment you notice what is happening inside you, before anyone else has a chance to influence it. Emotional awareness also deepens your relationships. When you recognize your emotions, you are less likely to react with anger or defensive. You are more likely to respond with understanding and calm. People respond better to those who are composed and thoughtful. You will notice a change in how others interact with you. Not because you demanded it, but because your emotional mastery naturally influences the environment around you. Finally, recognize that this skill is lifelong. There will always be moments when someone's words sting, or when criticism triggers an emotional reaction. The difference is that when you practice recognizing your emotions first, those moments no longer control you. They become opportunities to practice strength, patience, and self-mastery. Each moment you pause and observe your feelings is a moment you grow. Each moment you choose your response consciously is a moment you reclaim your power. Living this way is not just about avoiding hurt feeling. It is about building a life of stability, confidence, and resilience. It is about walking through the world with the knowledge that you control your inner state. No one can take that away from you. Recognizing your emotions before others' words affect your mood is not just the first step in not taking things personally. It is the first step in taking control of your life. It is the first step toward becoming the person you are capable of being. Every day provides an opportunity to practice. Every interaction is a chance to notice your emotions and choose how you respond. Over time, this builds a foundation of emotional strength that nothing outside of you can shake. You become free. You become steady. You become empowered. You are no longer at the mercy of the words or actions of others. You are fully in charge of your emotional life. That is true power, and it all begins with recognizing your emotions before anyone else's words have a chance to dictate them.
Chapter 2. Question why you feel attacked before reacting emotionally. The first step in transforming your life is to understand why you react the way you do. Every time someone says something that feels sharp or critical, your first instinct may be to defend yourself, argue, or feel hurt. That instinct is natural, but it is also automatic. It is a reflex that comes from years of conditioning. The problem is that reacting without understanding usually causes more harm than good. It leads to regret, damaged relationships, and unnecessary stress. Before responding, it is crucial to question why you feel attacked. When you feel attacked, the feeling is usually less about the other person and more about your own perceptions and beliefs. Our minds are constantly interpreting reality through filters shaped by past experiences, fears, and insecurities. A comment that seems aggressive may trigger old memories of rejection or criticism. A casual remark might ignite feelings of inadequacy. Recognizing that the source of your reaction is often internal allows you to pause and examine what is really happening. You are not powerless against your emotions. You can investigate them, understand them, and choose your response. Start by asking yourself, why does this bother me? This simple question can stop a reaction in its tracks. It creates a moment of clarity where you can observe your feelings instead of being swept away by them. Often, you will discover that the intensity of your reaction is disproportionate to the words spoken. This is a powerful insight because it shows that the perceived attack is amplified by your own assumptions. Learning to question your feelings helps you see the situation objectively. Our minds are wired to protect us. When we feel threatened, we automatically go into defense mode. That can be physical, verbal, or emotional. You might feel a surge of anger, a tightness in your chest, or a desire to confront. Those reactions are survival mechanisms, but in modern life, they are often misplaced. Most of the time, someone's words are not life-threatening. They are opinions, misunderstandings, or reflections of the other person's mood. By questioning why you feel attacked, you activate reasoning over reflex. You choose perspective over impulse. It is important to distinguish between the stimulus and your interpretation. The stimulus is what is said or done. Your interpretation is the story your mind creates about it. For example, if a colleague says, "This report needs more work," you might feel criticized and think, "They think I am incompetent." But the reality is, the comment is about the work, not your worth. When you question your emotional reaction, you separate facts from assumptions. This distinction is essential for emotional clarity. When someone triggers an emotional response, pause and observe your body. Notice the tension, the heat in your face, or the rapid heartbeat. These signals are indicators of an emotional reaction that needs examining. Ask yourself, what belief is being challenged here? Often, you will find that the belief is connected to fear, insecurity, or past experiences. Perhaps you fear rejection or have a strong need for approval. Recognizing the underlying belief allows you to address it rather than reacting blindly to the moment. Questioning why you feel attacked is also an exercise in self-awareness. It strengthens your ability to reflect on your emotions without judgment. You are not labeling your feelings as good or bad. You are simply observing them, understanding them, and discovering their source. Self-awareness creates a foundation for control. When you understand why a comment stings, you gain insight into areas where you can grow. You gain the ability to respond instead of react. One technique that helps is mental rehearsal. Imagine a situation where someone might criticize you or challenge your ideas. Before it happens, practice questioning your emotions in your mind. Picture yourself hearing a difficult comment, pausing and asking, "Why does this feel personal?" Consider alternative interpretations of the word. This mental exercise trains your brain to respond with calmness in real-life situations. Repetition of this process builds emotional resilience over time. Another critical element is empathy. When you feel attacked, take a moment to consider the other person's perspective. Why might they have spoken that way? Are they stressed, tired, or dealing with pressures you cannot see? Recognizing that their behavior may have little to do with you personally reduces the intensity of your emotional response. Empathy does not excuse poor behavior, but it allows you to see the situation clearly. You gain the ability to react strategically rather than emotionally. Questioning your feelings also prevents the escalation of conflict. When two people feel attacked, arguments intensify and misunderstandings multiply. By examining your emotions first, you prevent reactive responses that could escalate tension. You pause, analyze, and respond with intention. This approach not only preserves your peace of mind, but also improves communication. People respond better to calm, thoughtful reactions than to impulsive, emotional outbursts. It is helpful to journal your reflections after emotionally charged encounters. Write down what happened, what you felt, and why you think you felt that way. Documenting your observations reinforces the habit of questioning your reactions. Over time, patterns emerge. You begin to see recurring triggers, limiting beliefs or assumptions that repeatedly influence your emotion. Awareness of these patterns allows you to prepare and respond more effectively in the future. Recognizing the internal triggers of your emotions also strengthens your confidence. When you understand that your feelings are your responsibility, you stop giving away your power to others. You are no longer at the mercy of criticism, judgment, or negativity. Confidence grows because you know you can handle whatever comes your way with composure. Emotional stability becomes a source of strength rather than vulnerability. Questioning why you feel attacked also improves decision-making. When emotions are unchecked, decisions are often impulsive and poorly thought out. Anger, fear, or frustration can cloud judgment. By pausing and analyzing why you feel attacked, you allow rational thought to guide your action. You make choices from clarity rather than chaos. This approach impacts every area of life, from professional interactions to personal relationships. It is essential to practice this habit consistently. Every moment you take to examine your emotions strengthens your self-discipline. It trains your mind to pause instead of reacting immediately. It develops patience and perspective. This is not a one-time skill but a lifestyle. Emotional mastery is built through repetition, reflection, and a commitment to self-awareness. You will also notice that questioning your emotions reduces stress. Emotional reactions consume energy. They disrupt focus and cloud thinking. When you take the time to analyze your feelings before responding, you conserve energy. You redirect your focus to solutions rather than problems. You feel lighter and more capable of handling challenges. Stress diminishes when you operate from awareness rather than reactivity. Another practice is to ask yourself what meaning you are assigning to the situation. Often, we take things personally because we assign negative meaning automatically. By questioning the meaning, you open the door to alternative interpretations. Perhaps the comment was constructive, neutral, or even helpful. Perhaps the tone or words were influenced by the other person's circumstances. Meaning shapes emotion, and questioning meaning shapes response. Remember that questioning why you feel attacked is an act of self-respect. It affirms that you are in control of your mind, emotions, and action. You refuse to be a victim of circumstance or other people's words. You choose to respond thoughtfully, strategically, and intentionally. This mindset transforms interactions, relationships, and even self-perception. It is also worth noting that when you question your emotions, you improve your communication. Responding calmly and thoughtfully invites dialogue rather than conflict. People are more willing to listen and consider your perspective when you are composed. Your influence grows because you are not reactive, but rational and considerate. Emotional control increases respect and authority naturally. Physical awareness reinforces this process. When you feel the initial sting of attack, take a slow breath. Feel your body. Notice tension, heartbeat, and temperature. Anchoring yourself physically while questioning your emotions creates a feedback loop that calms the mind. The body and mind are interconnected, and controlling one helps control the other. Finally, questioning why you feel attacked fosters growth. Every time you examine your emotions, you learn more about yourself. You discover strengths and weaknesses, insecurities and beliefs, and areas for improvement. Life becomes a continuous journey of self-awareness and mastery. Emotional growth builds resilience, confidence, and clarity. You develop the ability to handle criticism, conflict, and challenge without losing your peace of mind. In practice, this habit turns ordinary moments into opportunities for personal growth. Every difficult conversation, every criticism, and every uncomfortable interaction becomes a chance to strengthen self-mastery. Each time you ask yourself why you feel attacked, you step away from reactive behavior and step into intentional living. You become the person who chooses responses with wisdom rather than impulse. Over time, the habit of questioning your emotions leads to profound freedom. You are no longer bound by the judgments, words, or moods of others. You live from awareness, self-control, and choice. Your emotional life becomes your own. This freedom allows you to focus on what truly matters: your growth, your relationships, your goals, and your peace of mind. This skill changes everything. It affects how you feel, how you act, how others perceive you, and how you navigate the world. Questioning why you feel attacked before reacting emotionally is more than a technique. It is a path to mastery, freedom, and emotional intelligence. It empowers you to live life fully, without unnecessary pain, drama, or distraction. You discover that true strength lies in understanding yourself, taking responsibility for your reactions, and responding with clarity, calm, and purpose.
Chapter 3. Focus on your intentions, not on others' judgments. Every day, people will have opinions about what you do, how you act, and the choices you make. Some of those opinions will be positive, others will be critical, and many will be based on little understanding of who you truly are. The challenge is that most people allow these judgments to control their actions, their confidence, and even their happiness. The moment you begin to focus on your intentions instead of other people's judgments, you step into a level of freedom that few ever experience. Your life starts being guided by purpose and clarity rather than the fluctuating opinions of the world around you. Focusing on your intentions requires a clear understanding of what matters to you. You need to define what you are trying to accomplish and why it matters to you personally. When your actions are grounded in your values and your goals, the opinions of others become less threatening. They may still speak, criticize, or misunderstand, but their words do not derail you because your energy is invested in a clear and meaningful direction. Intentions become your compass, keeping you aligned with your true self instead of reacting to the external noise that constantly surrounds us. Start by asking yourself a simple question before taking action. Why am I doing this? If the answer is tied to your personal growth, contribution, or long-term vision, then the opinions of others are secondary. If the answer is to gain approval, avoid criticism, or prove something to someone else, then your decisions are already at the mercy of external judgment. Understanding the motivation behind your actions is the key to staying grounded in your intentions. When you act with clarity, every step you take becomes purposeful rather than performative. Most people underestimate the power of living intentionally. They allow the fear of judgment to dictate their choices. They modify their behavior to please others or avoid conflict. Over time, this creates frustration, self-doubt, and a sense of living a life that is not truly their own. Every time you choose to focus on your intentions, you reclaim ownership over your decisions. You begin to act from a place of self-respect, conviction, and integrity rather than from the shifting opinions of those around you. It is natural to feel sensitive to judgment, especially when it comes from people whose approval we value. The mind is wired to seek acceptance, to belong, and to be recognized, but there is a fundamental difference between healthy social awareness and living at the mercy of judgment. Healthy awareness allows you to consider feedback, learn, and grow. Living for judgment traps you in a cycle of pleasing others while neglecting your own needs and values. Focusing on your intentions shifts your energy from validation seeking to purposeful action. To implement this, practice defining your intentions clearly before starting any task or decision. Write them down, speak them aloud, internalize them. For example, if you are leading a project, your intention might be to deliver meaningful results, help your team grow, or solve a problem effectively. Your intention is not to impress anyone or avoid criticism. With this focus, every decision, every action, and every response aligns with your purpose. Criticism may come, but it will have no power over your confidence or direction. Pay attention to the emotional weight of judgment. When someone criticizes or questions you, notice the immediate feelings that arise. Is it frustration, anger, or fear? Then remind yourself of your intention. Ask, does this criticism change what I am trying to achieve? Often, you will realize that it does not. The discomfort is temporary, but your intention and purpose are enduring. Anchoring yourself in your intention reduces emotional reactivity and increases resilience. It is also important to recognize that judgment is inevitable. No matter how well you act, some people will always form opinions that do not align with reality. Some will misunderstand your choices, others will project their own insecurities onto you, and some will simply disagree. When your focus is on intentions, you are no longer trying to control what everyone thinks. You focus on what you can control, your actions, your effort, and your integrity. This shift is liberating and empowering. One effective method is to visualize your intentions before difficult interaction.
If you anticipate criticism or judgment, imagine yourself responding from a place of clarity. Picture yourself grounded in purpose, confident in your goals, and unaffected by external opinions. This mental rehearsal trains your mind to stay anchored in what truly matters. It reduces the automatic emotional reactions that come from fear of judgment and strengthens your ability to act with intention under pressure. Another practical step is to measure success by your own standards. When your metrics for achievement are defined by your values and intentions, external judgments lose influence. If you are satisfied that you acted according to your principles and gave your best effort, then criticism does not diminish your accomplishment. This creates a sense of internal validation that cannot be shaken by outside voices. Your confidence becomes self-generated rather than borrowed from approval. Focusing on intentions also helps you navigate relationships more effectively. When your actions are guided by purpose rather than fear of judgment, you communicate more clearly, act more consistently, and establish healthy boundaries. Others respond to authenticity and commitment rather than to attempts to please. People are drawn to those who live intentionally because they exude clarity, reliability, and integrity. Your influence grows naturally when your energy is invested in meaningful goals instead of managing perceptions. It is crucial to remember that intentions require ongoing reflection. Life is dynamic, and priorities shift. Regularly revisiting your intentions ensures that your actions remain aligned with your evolving values and goals. Journaling, meditation, or quiet reflection can help maintain this alignment. When you notice judgment pulling at your mind, return to your intentions and ask if your actions still reflect them. This practice strengthens discipline, focus, and clarity. Pay attention to the subtle ways judgment affects you. Sometimes it is not overt criticism, but passive disapproval, social comparison, or even imagined expectations. Your mind fills in gaps and interprets actions as judgment. By centering yourself in intention, you reduce the impact of these subtle influences. Your energy is preserved for meaningful action rather than wasted on trying to manage perceptions. Focusing on intentions requires courage. It is easier to seek approval, conform to expectations, or avoid conflict. Acting from intention demands honesty, accountability, and sometimes standing alone. It asks you to trust yourself and prioritize what truly matters over temporary comfort. This courage develops character and strengthens emotional resilience. It creates a life guided by principles rather than by fear. Another technique is to break down actions into intentional steps. When you have a clear plan, your focus shifts to execution rather than perception. Every small action becomes a deliberate choice aligned with your purpose. This prevents reactive behavior that is influenced by what others might think or say. Over time, your habits form around intention, and judgment from outside sources becomes less disruptive. Focusing on intentions also enhances learning and growth. When criticism is approached through the lens of purpose, you can extract valuable insights without feeling attacked. Feedback is evaluated against your goals and principles, not against your self-esteem. This allows for improvement while maintaining confidence and composure. You become more receptive to constructive input and less vulnerable to unnecessary negativity. Emotional awareness supports intentional focus. Notice when fear of judgment arises and name it. Recognize that it is a natural emotion, but not a command for action. Feel it without acting on it. Then reconnect with your intention and allow it to guide your response. This process creates a feedback loop of self-control and clarity, reinforcing the habit of prioritizing purpose over opinion. Intentions also shape long-term vision. When your daily actions align with your intentions, you create momentum toward meaningful goals. The accumulation of purposeful choices builds confidence, competence, and credibility. External judgment may continue, but it loses relevance because the results of intentional actions speak louder than words. Focusing on intentions allows you to invest energy in what produces results rather than what provokes criticism. It is helpful to remind yourself regularly that judgment reflects the speaker, not the target. People interpret reality through their own experiences, biases, and insecurities. Their opinions reveal more about them than about you. When you act from intention, you shift the focus from their perception to your principles. You reduce emotional vulnerability and strengthen self-assurance. Another important element is patience. Intentional living does not eliminate judgment overnight. Others may continue to criticize or misunderstand you. Your progress comes from consistently returning to your intentions, evaluating actions through that lens, and not being swayed by external noise. Over time, your mindset shifts naturally, and judgment loses its power. Focus on what you can contribute, rather than how you are perceived. When your energy is dedicated to meaningful work, helping others and achieving your goals, judgment becomes irrelevant. Contribution rooted in intention brings satisfaction and fulfillment that no opinion can diminish. You gain a sense of purpose that anchors your actions and stabilizes your emotional state. Finally, recognize that focusing on intentions is a lifelong habit. Each day provides countless opportunities to practice this skill. Every interaction, decision, and challenge allows you to choose purpose over reaction. Over time, intentional living transforms confidence, relationships, and the quality of your life. You become steady, resilient, and empowered, unaffected by criticism or fleeting opinion. This is freedom, mastery, and the essence of self-directed living.
Chapter 4. Notice patterns in how criticism triggers unnecessary stress. Criticism comes to all of us, and no one enjoys it. The problem is not the words themselves, but the stress that follows when we let them take over our mind and body. Some people seem to handle criticism effortlessly, while others feel crushed by a single comment. The difference is not in the criticism itself, but in how we respond and the patterns we have developed over time. Noticing these patterns is the first step in breaking free from unnecessary stress and reclaiming control over your emotional state. Begin by paying attention to how your body reacts when someone criticizes you. There may be a quickened heartbeat, a tight chest, shallow breathing, or a sinking feeling in your stomach. These physical sensations are early warning signs of stress, and they happen before you even realize what your mind is doing. Observing them is crucial because it gives you a moment to pause and examine your reaction rather than being swept away. Awareness of these physical signals allows you to intervene before stress escalates into frustration, anger, or resentment. Next, notice the mental patterns that accompany criticism. Most people immediately replay what was said in their mind, often exaggerating or interpreting it negatively. You may think, they are trying to make me look incompetent, or they must not like me. These thoughts can spiral, creating a feedback loop that intensifies stress. Recognizing that these thoughts are a pattern, not a fact, helps you step back. You are not powerless over your mind, and these recurring mental reactions can be interrupted once they are recognized. Criticism often triggers stress because it touches on our insecurities. Perhaps you are sensitive about your skills, appearance, or decision-making. Repeated exposure to criticism in the same area will amplify stress if you don't observe the pattern. Each incident becomes a reinforcement of fear, doubt, or self-judgment.
By noticing the pattern, you can separate the emotional reaction from the actual content of the criticism. You start to see that the stress comes more from your interpretation than the comment itself. Create a record of when criticism affects you most. Writing down each instance, your immediate reaction, and the resulting emotions is a powerful tool. Over time, you will begin to see clear trends. Perhaps certain people consistently trigger negative responses, or certain types of comments are particularly sensitive. Recognizing these patterns allows you to anticipate stress and prepare responses in advance. The more conscious you become of the triggers, the less power they hold over you. It is also essential to distinguish between constructive and destructive criticism. Constructive feedback is intended to help you improve and grow. Destructive criticism often has little basis in truth and may reflect the other person's frustrations, insecurities, or misunderstanding. Noticing patterns in the type of criticism you receive helps you determine which comments deserve attention and which should be released. Stress arises when we treat all criticism equally, assuming it is a reflection of our worth rather than an opportunity to learn selectively. Observe how your environment and circumstances influence your reaction to criticism. Are you more sensitive when you are tired, rushed, or stressed from other challenges? Stress is cumulative, and criticism can feel heavier when other pressures are present. Noticing these patterns helps you create strategies to manage your emotional energy. For example, if you know you respond poorly when fatigued, taking a moment to breathe and reset before addressing criticism can prevent unnecessary stress. Pay attention to your habitual coping mechanism. Do you respond with anger, withdrawal, over-explaining, or self-doubt? Each person has automatic reactions that have been reinforced over time. These habitual patterns often amplify stress instead of reducing it. By observing and labeling your reactions, you gain the power to replace old habits with healthier responses. Awareness alone begins to weaken the cycle of automatic stress responses. It is also helpful to notice patterns in timing and frequency. Do certain situations or people consistently provoke stress through criticism? Patterns emerge when you track these interactions, and recognizing them allows you to manage your exposure and preparation. You may decide to approach feedback conversations differently, or limit interactions with those who consistently create unnecessary tension. Understanding when and where stress arises is a vital tool in emotional management. Emotional triggers often repeat because of deep-seated beliefs. For instance, you may hold the belief that making mistakes is unacceptable, or that others' approval defines your value. Criticism challenges these beliefs, and stress is a natural response. By noticing recurring patterns, you can identify which underlying beliefs are driving your emotional response. This is the foundation for changing your mindset and reducing unnecessary stress in the future. Another strategy is to evaluate the narrative you create internally. When criticism occurs, notice the mental story you tell yourself. Are you replaying it repeatedly? Are you imagining worst-case scenarios? These narrative patterns reinforce stress and anxiety. By observing them, you can intervene and choose a more rational and measured interpretation. Stress diminishes when your mind is trained to evaluate criticism thoughtfully rather than through the lens of fear or insecurity. Recognizing patterns also allows you to develop preventive strategies. If you notice that certain comments, situations, or people consistently trigger stress, you can implement steps to minimize impact. This may include preparation, mindset rehearsal, emotional grounding, or communication strategies. Instead of reacting impulsively, you act intentionally. Over time, these preventive measures become habits, reducing stress naturally and consistently. The social context of criticism often contributes to recurring stress patterns. Group dynamics, cultural expectations, or workplace hierarchies can amplify the emotional response. By noticing these patterns, you understand the external influences that shape your reactions. This insight helps you separate the content of criticism from the social context, reducing the personal weight you assign to it. Stress is often amplified when you internalize external pressures unnecessarily. Mindfulness plays a central role in noticing patterns. Take moments throughout the day to check in with your emotions. Observe the intensity of your stress, the triggers, and your responses without judgment. Mindfulness creates a feedback loop that strengthens self-awareness. When you notice a pattern forming in real time, you can interrupt it, preventing escalation and reducing long-term emotional strain. Noticing patterns also allows you to reflect and improve over time. Review past experiences with criticism and identify common threads. Perhaps you notice you are defensive when your ideas are questioned, or anxious when performance is evaluated publicly. Recognizing these trends gives you a map for personal growth. You can design strategies to address weak points, build resilience, and respond with confidence instead of stress. It is essential to understand that stress is not an unavoidable consequence of criticism. The reaction is shaped by habit, expectation, and belief. Once you notice recurring patterns, you realize that your response is a choice. Awareness empowers you to shift from automatic stress to conscious management. The more consistent you are in noticing these patterns, the less likely criticism will control your emotional state. Ask yourself what lessons each stress-inducing criticism can teach. Instead of focusing on the negative feeling, examine the underlying opportunities. Maybe there is an area for improvement, or perhaps you discover a personal trigger that needs attention. Noticing patterns allows you to transform stressful moments into growth experiences. This mindset shift reduces emotional weight and increases resilience. Reflection is key. After experiencing criticism, take time to analyze your response. What patterns emerge? Which triggers caused the strongest reaction? How did your body respond? How did your thoughts escalate or diminish stress? By answering these questions consistently, you build a clear understanding of your stress patterns. This understanding is the foundation for emotional mastery. Building awareness of patterns also improves communication. When you understand your own triggers, you can articulate your responses more effectively. You can respond calmly and assertively instead of reacting defensively. This creates healthier interactions and reduces tension for both you and others. Patterns recognized are patterns managed, and management reduces unnecessary stress dramatically. It is valuable to notice positive patterns as well. Observe situations where you remained calm under criticism. Analyze what enabled that response. Did you focus on facts rather than emotion? Did you pause before reacting? Did you remind yourself of your intention or perspective? By reinforcing positive patterns, you increase the likelihood of replicating them in future interactions, strengthening emotional resilience further. Chronic stress often arises when patterns go unnoticed. Small reactions accumulate over time, creating a persistent sense of tension and anxiety. Recognizing recurring stress patterns prevents this accumulation. Each instance becomes an opportunity to practice awareness, intervention, and emotional control. Over time, stress is reduced, confidence grows, and emotional clarity is strengthened. Finally, notice that breaking patterns does not mean suppressing emotion. You do not ignore criticism or pretend it does not exist. Instead, you understand the mechanisms of your response, see the repetition, and choose a conscious, deliberate path. This approach transforms criticism from a source of unnecessary stress into an opportunity for reflection, learning, and growth. By noticing patterns in how criticism triggers stress, you regain power over your emotional life, enhance your resilience,
and create a foundation for lasting personal development.
Chapter 5. Separate facts from opinions to regain clear perspective. Every day we are confronted with information, comments, and judgments from others. Some of it is true and grounded in reality, and some of it is merely opinion. Most people fail to distinguish between the two, and that is why they often feel hurt, frustrated, or anxious. Separating facts from opinions is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining emotional clarity, making better decisions, and staying aligned with your goals. When you learn to distinguish what is real from what is someone else's interpretation, you reclaim your ability to see situations clearly and act wisely. Start by understanding what a fact is. A fact is something verifiable and observable. It is objective and independent of anyone's feelings or judgments. For example, if a report contains a mistake, the fact is that the mistake exists. That is separate from how someone reacts to it, how they describe it, or the criticism that follows. Recognizing facts allows you to see the truth of a situation without exaggeration or distortion. You can respond from clarity rather than emotion. An opinion, on the other hand, is a personal interpretation. It is shaped by the speaker's perspective, experiences, and biases. Someone might describe the same mistake as careless or incompetent, but that is not a fact. It is their evaluation of the situation. Opinions are not inherently wrong, but they are not absolute truth. Confusing opinions with facts is what often leads to unnecessary stress, defensiveness, and conflict. The first step in separating facts from opinions is awareness. When you hear criticism or feedback, pause and ask yourself, is this a fact I can verify, or is this someone's interpretation? This question slows down your reaction. It allows your mind to move from emotional reflex to rational analysis. The more consistently you ask this question, the easier it becomes to observe reality without being dragged into other people's judgments. Notice how your emotions react to opinions. Often, we feel hurt or defensive, not because of the factual content of a situation, but because of how someone expressed it or what they assumed about us. This is the mind confusing an opinion with a truth about ourselves. Emotional stress decreases when you consistently separate the observable facts from the subjective interpretations imposed by others. You realize that your value and competence are not defined by every judgment thrown your way. Another practical method is to rewrite feedback in neutral language. Take a comment that triggers a reaction and break it down. For instance, if someone says, "You never do anything right," separate the factual component from the opinion. The fact might be that a particular task was not completed according to expectation. The rest is interpretation and exaggeration. Rewriting statements in this way allows you to focus on what is actionable instead of what is inflammatory. Observation of patterns is also crucial. People who struggle with stress often internalize opinions repeatedly, creating long-term negative narratives about themselves. By recognizing recurring patterns of conflating facts and opinions, you gain insight into where unnecessary emotional responses originate. This awareness is the first step toward changing habitual thinking. Once you see the distinction clearly, your response becomes intentional rather than automatic. It is also important to analyze the credibility of the source. Not every opinion carries equal weight. Consider the person providing the feedback, their experience, understanding of the situation, and intentions. Some opinions may be well-informed, while others are uninformed or biased. Separating facts from opinions means evaluating both the content and the source. When you do this, you prevent yourself from being influenced by voices that do not serve your growth or understanding. Ask yourself whether the opinion aligns with observable reality. Often, opinions are emotionally charged or influenced by temporary circumstance. Someone might be frustrated, tired, or distracted,
and their words reflect their state, rather than the truth of the situation. By checking opinions against facts, you prevent external emotions from infiltrating your own mindset. You maintain clarity, composure, and the ability to act rationally. Developing the habit of documenting facts is extremely effective. When you write down what actually happened in a situation, you create a record that can be reviewed objectively. This record serves as a reference point when opinions or judgments arise. It also reinforces the separation between observable events and interpretations. Over time, this practice strengthens mental discipline and reduces the likelihood of reacting emotionally to subjective commentary. Notice how opinions often trigger self-talk. Phrases like, "they think I am incapable," or "I must be failing," are internalizations of someone else's perspective. These thoughts can escalate stress and reinforce self-doubt. By recognizing these mental patterns and labeling them as opinions rather than facts, you gain emotional distance. You see your thoughts for what they are, interpretations rather than truths. This awareness reduces the intensity of stress and allows for a more measured response. Another strategy is to ask clarifying questions when receiving feedback. Opinions often contain assumptions or exaggerations. By seeking clarity, you can identify what is factual and what is subjective. For example, ask, "Can you give an example of what you mean?" or "Which part do you consider most critical?" This approach transforms vague or emotionally charged opinions into actionable insights grounded in reality. It also demonstrates confidence and a willingness to learn, rather than react defensively. Separating facts from opinions also improves decision-making. Decisions based on objective information are more reliable than those driven by emotional reactions to judgments. When you focus on facts, you reduce the influence of fear, insecurity, or social pressure. Your choices become strategic rather than reactive, grounded in reality rather than distorted perception. This shift enhances both personal and professional outcomes. It is helpful to notice how frequently you allow opinions to dictate emotions or behavior. Many people unconsciously give more weight to external judgment than internal understanding. Tracking these moments helps identify patterns of susceptibility. Recognizing these patterns gives you the opportunity to intervene, apply critical thinking, and reinforce intentional responses based on facts rather than reactive feelings. Consider the role of assumptions in your reaction. Often, opinions feel personal because we assume they reflect objective truths about us. We imagine motives, assign meanings, and interpret intent without evidence. By separating observable facts from subjective opinion, you prevent assumptions from spiraling into stress. You build a foundation of clarity that allows for confident, rational action. Reflection after interactions is also valuable. Take time to review situations where criticism or judgment triggered stress. Identify which elements were factual and which were opinion-based. Note how your emotional reaction corresponded to the interpretation rather than reality. This practice strengthens your ability to recognize the distinction in real time and gradually rewires habitual responses. It is essential to train your mind to prioritize facts over opinions in daily life. Facts are actionable. Opinions are interpretive and often unreliable. When faced with judgment, ask yourself, what is the observable truth here? What can I act upon? By focusing on facts, you conserve energy, reduce emotional volatility, and maintain clear perspective. Intentional focus on reality allows for better problem solving, relationship management, and personal growth. Notice also that some opinions reflect projection rather than truth. People often project their fears, biases, or frustrations onto others. Recognizing this pattern helps you separate their perspective from the objective facts of the situation. When you understand that criticism often says more about the speaker than about you, emotional stress diminishes. You gain mental freedom
and the ability to respond with rationality and calm. Separating facts from opinions fosters emotional resilience. When you internalize this practice, outside judgments lose the ability to destabilize you. You respond from a place of informed awareness instead of reactionary fear or anger. This resilience builds confidence, strengthens self-esteem, and allows for consistent performance under pressure. Emotional strength grows when your mind is anchored in reality rather than opinions. It is also important to distinguish between immediate reactions and considered reflection. Opinions may provoke instantaneous emotional responses, but facts remain steady. Taking time to review the situation objectively before acting allows you to respond strategically. Pause, assess and identify which elements are facts you can address and which are opinions that do not require emotional investment. This approach reduces unnecessary stress and improves outcomes. Consider practicing daily mental exercises that reinforce fact-based thinking. When you encounter news, feedback, or casual opinions, consciously categorize information as fact or opinion. Ask yourself which statements are verifiable and which are interpretation. Over time, this practice trains your mind to automatically assess information accurately, reducing susceptibility to stress and emotional disruption. Finally, remember that mastering the distinction between facts and opinions is a lifelong skill. Each interaction, each critique, each challenging moment is an opportunity to practice. The more consistently you apply this awareness, the more your perspective becomes clear, objective, and grounded. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. Emotional stress decreases. Confidence grows. You begin to navigate relationships, work, and challenges with clarity, composure, and purpose.
Chapter 6. Practice self-validation instead of seeking constant outside approval. The need for approval is one of the strongest human drives. From childhood through adulthood, many of us learn to measure our worth based on how others perceive us. Compliments, praise, recognition, and acceptance become the yardsticks of self-esteem. When approval is lacking, we feel inadequate, anxious, or unworthy. This pattern creates dependency on external validation, leaving your peace of mind and confidence vulnerable to the whims of others. Learning to practice self-validation is the key to freedom, stability, and personal growth. Self-validation starts with acknowledging your own feelings and experiences without needing others to confirm them. Your emotions are valid simply because you feel them. When you stop waiting for permission to feel or be, you take ownership of your internal life. This doesn't mean ignoring feedback or becoming arrogant. It means recognizing that your worth is inherent, not conditional on others' opinions. Every time you acknowledge your feelings, achievements, or struggles without external input, you reinforce your self-trust. A practical first step is to verbalize your own validation. When you accomplish something or make a decision, pause and recognize it yourself. Say quietly, "I handled that situation well," or "I gave my best effort today." This simple acknowledgement retrains your mind to supply the affirmation you have been seeking externally. The more consistently you do this, the less power outside validation holds over your emotional state. Notice how dependent you have become on others' approval. Are your decisions influenced by fear of criticism? Do you avoid opportunities because of potential judgment? Are your moods tied to compliments or negative feedback? Observing these patterns is essential because they reveal the areas where your self-validation is weak. Awareness alone begins the process of independence from constant external approval. Write down your achievements and moments of growth. This exercise externalizes your self-validation and creates a tangible record of your capabilities. When you read these notes, you see that your value does not depend on someone else's recognition. Over time, this practice builds confidence that is internal rather than borrowed. It also allows you to celebrate progress in ways that are meaningful to you, rather than relying on praise to feel accomplished. Another technique is to define your standards and expectations for yourself. What does success mean to you? What are your principles, values, and goals? When you act according to your own standards, your validation comes from alignment with your personal vision rather than external feedback. This focus creates autonomy and resilience because you measure your worth by your own criteria instead of someone else's judgment. It is important to recognize the difference between constructive guidance and the need for approval. Feedback can be useful when it provides insight for growth, but seeking approval for every choice makes you reactive and insecure. By practicing self-validation, you learn to evaluate guidance objectively. You take what is useful, leave what is irrelevant, and maintain your inner confidence regardless of opinion. Observe the emotional patterns tied to seeking approval. When you feel anxious, disappointed, or discouraged, ask yourself whether it is triggered by a lack of external recognition. If so, pause and self-validate. Remind yourself that your worth is not contingent on someone else noticing or approving. This habit interrupts the cycle of dependency on others for emotional stability. Over time, self-validation becomes the default, reducing stress and insecurity. Practice affirming your efforts, not just your outcomes. Many people only seek approval when results are visible or praised. Self-validation requires recognizing your diligence, persistence, and integrity even when the results are unseen or recognized. Acknowledge the commitment, consistency, and courage you invest. This builds confidence that is sustainable, independent of recognition or reward. Another key element is cultivating self-awareness. Pay attention to moments when you act primarily to gain approval. Notice how often you modify your behavior, choices, or voice to satisfy others. Reflection reveals patterns and allows you to consciously redirect your energy toward actions aligned with your values. Awareness is the foundation for replacing external validation with internal assurance. Celebrate progress, no matter how small. Self-validation thrives on recognizing incremental improvement. Did you handle a difficult conversation with calm? Did you stick to a personal commitment? Did you act with honesty or courage? These actions deserve acknowledgement from yourself. Over time, recognizing small wins strengthens the habit of self-validation, reinforcing internal confidence. Set boundaries that protect your self-validation. People who rely on approval often tolerate criticism, disrespect, or manipulation to maintain acceptance. By prioritizing your own judgment of your actions and value, you naturally create boundaries. You no longer bend to please, tolerate, or over-explain. This reinforces a mindset where validation comes from personal integrity rather than external affirmation. Notice how social media and constant comparison can undermine self-validation. The pursuit of likes, comments, and recognition online often replaces internal acknowledgement. To counter this, consciously affirm yourself daily. Focus on your efforts, growth, and values rather than external approval metrics. This creates a mindset anchored in reality and self-worth instead of the fleeting and unreliable judgments of others. It is helpful to practice independent decision-making. Make choices based on your values and objectives, even when they might not please everyone. Each time you choose according to your principles, you exercise self-validation. You confirm internally that your judgment, wisdom, and priorities matter more than external opinion. This reinforces autonomy and strengthens resilience against criticism or disapproval. Reflect on past experiences where seeking approval caused unnecessary stress. Perhaps you avoided a challenge, altered your behavior, or doubted yourself because you feared judgment. By understanding these moments, you recognize patterns and their consequences. Self-validation is strengthened when you learn from these experiences and consciously choose a different response in the future.
Acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses honestly. Self-validation does not require perfection. Recognize what you do well and where you need improvement. This realistic self-assessment provides a stable foundation for internal approval. When you accept your full self, you reduce the need for external reassurance, and confidence grows naturally. Practice verbal self-affirmation daily. Take a few moments each day to speak directly to yourself about your value, efforts, and intentions. Statements like, "I am capable of handling challenges," or "my actions matter and align with my values," reinforce internal acknowledgement. Repetition builds neural pathways that make self-validation a habitual and automatic response to both success and challenge. Notice how approval seeking can limit creativity and personal growth. When you rely on external validation, you may avoid experimenting, taking risks, or expressing your true ideas for fear of judgment. By focusing on self-validation, you give yourself permission to explore, innovate, and act authentically. Confidence in your own judgment allows growth to flourish without being stifled by fear of criticism. Observe your self-talk when you succeed or fail. Are your statements dependent on how others perceive your performance, or do they reflect internal recognition of effort, commitment, and learning? Rewriting your self-talk to affirm your value independently of external opinion builds a stronger sense of self and reduces vulnerability to disappointment or judgment. Set personal goals that matter to you and measure progress internally. When your focus is on achievement according to your standards rather than external praise, self-validation becomes natural. Your motivation shifts from pleasing others to fulfilling your own potential. This creates resilience, determination, and a sense of fulfillment that cannot be taken away. Notice how often the need for approval is tied to fear of rejection, failure, or disapproval. By practicing self-validation, you confront these fears directly. You acknowledge that your value is inherent and not contingent on others' reaction. Each act of self-recognition weakens fear and strengthens confidence, gradually reducing dependence on outside approval. Recognize that self-validation strengthens decision-making under pressure. When you trust your own judgment and internal assessment, you are less likely to be swayed by criticism, peer pressure, or fleeting opinions. You act with clarity, integrity, and confidence, grounded in your own understanding, rather than the need to please others. It is also important to balance self-validation with openness to feedback. True independence does not mean ignoring input. Constructive feedback provides opportunities for growth. The difference is that your emotional stability is not dependent on approval. You can listen, learn, and apply insight while maintaining confidence and composure. Notice patterns in your emotional triggers related to approval seeking. Are certain people, situations, or types of comments particularly influential? By recognizing these patterns, you gain awareness of where self-validation is most needed. Each recognition strengthens your ability to respond autonomously and with confidence. Create rituals that reinforce self-recognition. This might include daily journaling, reviewing accomplishments, reflecting on decisions made with integrity, or celebrating milestones privately. Rituals make internal acknowledgement habitual, reducing the likelihood of external opinion dictating your self-worth. Understand that self-validation is a lifelong practice. You will encounter challenges, criticism, and situations where external approval feels tempting. The difference is that by consistently practicing internal recognition, your emotional stability becomes anchored in your own judgment. Your confidence, peace of mind, and resilience increase over time. Finally, remember that self-validation transforms the way you interact with the world. When your sense of worth comes from within, your energy becomes free for creation, growth, and contribution. You no longer waste time managing perceptions or seeking approval. You act with authenticity, courage, and focus. Your relationships, decisions, and results improve because your foundation is solid and independent. Self-validation is freedom, empowerment, and the cornerstone of a life guided by purpose rather than reaction.
Chapter 7. Pause and breathe when anger or hurt starts rising. Anger and hurt are natural responses to situations where we feel threatened, misunderstood, or disrespected. Everyone experiences these emotions, and they are part of being human. The problem is not feeling them, but letting them take control of your thoughts, words, and actions. When anger or hurt rises unchecked, decisions are clouded, relationships suffer, and unnecessary stress accumulates. Learning to pause and breathe at the moment these emotions begin to escalate is a skill that changes everything. It creates space between stimulus and response, giving you the power to choose action rather than reaction. The first step in this process is awareness. You must notice the initial signs of rising anger or hurt before they overwhelm you. This can be a tightness in the chest, heat in the face, rapid heartbeat, or racing thoughts. These physical signals are your mind and body warning you that emotional intensity is increasing. Recognizing these early indicators allows you to intervene before acting impulsively. Awareness alone begins to weaken the grip of destructive emotions. Next, create the habit of pausing when these signals appear. Even a brief moment of pause can prevent regretful words or actions. This pause is not avoidance or denial, it is a deliberate choice to gain clarity. Count to 10, take a slow breath, or focus on your surroundings. This brief interruption gives your mind the opportunity to shift from reactionary thinking to conscious decision-making. Over time, pausing becomes automatic, and your responses become more measured and effective. Breathing is the most accessible and immediate tool to calm rising anger or hurt. Deep, controlled breaths signal to the body that it is safe to relax. Focusing on inhaling and exhaling slowly helps regulate heart rate, reduce tension, and clear mental clutter. When the body calms, the mind can assess the situation objectively. Breathing is simple, free, and available in every moment. Mastering this technique is a cornerstone of emotional self-control. Observe the thoughts that accompany anger or hurt. Often, the mind begins to generate worst-case scenarios, assign blame or exaggerate the offense. These thought patterns intensify the emotional response and make it difficult to act rationally. Pausing and breathing creates the mental space to recognize these patterns. You can then ask yourself, am I responding to the reality of the situation or to a story my mind is creating? This distinction prevents escalation and promotes clarity. Notice that most hurt or anger comes from perceived threats rather than actual harm. Someone may say something critical, dismissive, or unfair, and your mind interprets it as a personal attack. Often, the situation is not as dire as it feels in the moment. Pausing allows you to evaluate the facts rather than reacting to assumptions or emotional exaggeration. Breathing provides a physiological anchor to keep perspective, reducing the intensity of the initial emotional spike. It is essential to recognize habitual triggers. Certain people, situations, or words may consistently provoke anger or hurt. Awareness of these patterns allows you to anticipate responses and prepare strategies for maintaining calm. Perhaps a colleague consistently pushes boundaries, or a family member uses critical language. By noticing these recurring triggers, you can preemptively practice pausing and breathing, reducing the likelihood of impulsive reactions. Another technique is to separate emotion from action. Anger and hurt signal that a boundary has been crossed or a value challenged, but acting immediately may worsen the situation. Pausing allows you to identify the most effective response. You can choose to communicate clearly, remove yourself from the situation, or address the issue with calm and authority.
This separation prevents destructive behavior and creates opportunities for constructive outcomes. Reflection is a key component. After experiencing a moment of anger or hurt, review the event calmly. How did the pause and breathing affect your response? What thoughts escalated the emotion? How could you intervene earlier next time? Reflection reinforces learning, strengthens emotional awareness, and gradually builds the ability to respond with control even in high-stress situations. Notice how anger and hurt often fuel reactive communication. Words spoken impulsively can damage relationships, harm credibility, and create regret. Pausing interrupts this automatic reaction, allowing time to choose language carefully. You can express your feelings assertively rather than aggressively. Breathing slows the mind, giving you the clarity to communicate truth without letting emotion dictate tone. This strengthens relationships and maintains personal integrity. Practice grounding techniques alongside breathing. Focus on your body, the feeling of your feet on the ground, or the sensations of your hands. Grounding reinforces the pause, making it easier to detach from emotional escalation. These techniques create a sense of control and presence that allows reasoned thinking to guide your response instead of impulsive reactions. It is helpful to create mental cues for pausing. For instance, when you notice the first signs of anger or hurt, silently say, "Pause and breathe." Repeating this cue reinforces the habit and signals the mind to shift from reactive to intentional mode. With consistent practice, the cue becomes automatic, and you respond with clarity even under pressure. Notice that patience is part of this process. Emotions will not always dissipate immediately. Pausing and breathing gives time for intensity to decrease, but it may take repeated effort. The key is consistency. Each pause strengthens your ability to manage emotion, reduces impulsivity, and improves decision-making. Over time, emotional self-control becomes a reliable skill rather than an occasional effort. Observe how environmental factors influence emotional escalation. Fatigue, hunger, stress from other areas of life, or multitasking can increase susceptibility to anger or hurt. Pausing and breathing is most effective when combined with awareness of these conditions. When you recognize contributing factors, you can address them proactively, further reducing the likelihood of emotional overreaction. It is also crucial to recognize the role of interpretation. We often react not to events themselves, but to the meaning we assign to them. Pausing allows time to question these interpretations. Ask yourself, is my perception accurate? Am I adding assumptions or projecting fear? This mental check reduces unnecessary stress and ensures responses are based on reality rather than perception. Another strategy is to visualize successful emotional regulation. Imagine situations that typically provoke anger or hurt, and mentally rehearse pausing and breathing. Picture yourself remaining calm, thinking clearly, and responding constructively. Visualization strengthens neural pathways for emotional control, making it more likely that you will respond effectively in real life. Notice that anger and hurt are signals, not commands. They indicate something requires attention, but do not dictate immediate action. Pausing creates a buffer between feeling and doing, giving you the opportunity to choose a constructive. This choice is the essence of emotional intelligence and the foundation for stronger relationships, better decision-making, and personal growth. Practice slow, deliberate breathing techniques. Inhale deeply through the nose, hold briefly, and exhale fully through the mouth. Repeat for several cycles while focusing attention on the breath. This practice reduces tension, slows heart rate, and brings the mind back to the present. Breathing not only calms the body, but also interrupts the mental loop of escalating anger or hurt. Notice how habitual reactive patterns develop over time. Many people have trained themselves to respond immediately when upset, reinforcing stress and conflict. Pausing and breathing breaks this cycle. Each intervention interrupts automatic responses, creating a new pattern of measured, intentional action. Consistency over time transforms reactive behavior into deliberate emotional mastery. It is also important to cultivate compassion for yourself during moments of rising emotion. Recognize that anger and hurt are natural, and feeling them does not make you weak or flawed. By pausing and breathing without judgment, you treat yourself with patience and understanding. This self-compassion reduces stress, builds resilience, and strengthens the ability to respond constructively. Observe how physical activity can complement pausing and breathing. When emotions rise, taking a brief walk, stretching, or practicing gentle movement can help release tension. Combining mindful breathing with physical grounding enhances control and reduces the likelihood of impulsive reaction. You reinforce the mind-body connection and create a holistic approach to emotional regulation. You can express boundaries, assert needs, or provide feedback without escalation. The pause allows for strategic thought and deliberate language, transforming moments that could have caused conflict into opportunities for understanding and resolution. Reflection on past successes reinforces the habit. Recall moments when pausing and breathing prevented a reaction you would have later regretted. Remember how clarity and composure allowed better outcomes. This reflection strengthens belief in the practice, motivating consistency and deepening emotional control over time. Notice that some triggers are recurring and predictable. Identifying these triggers allows you to implement preemptive pauses and breathing before escalation begins. Anticipation reduces stress and strengthens your ability to remain composed. You create a proactive, rather than reactive, approach to emotional challenges. Finally, understand that pausing and breathing is a skill, not a single action. Each practice builds competence, confidence, and resilience. The more consistently you apply this approach, the less power anger and hurt hold over your life. Emotional freedom is achieved when you can feel without being consumed, respond without being reactive, and act from clarity rather than intensity. This practice transforms relationships, decision-making, and personal well-being. The ability to pause and breathe at the moment of rising emotion is a cornerstone of personal mastery, self-respect, and lifelong growth.
Chapter 8. Reflect on your values to guide measured responses. Every decision, every reaction, and every interaction reflects the values we hold. Values are the invisible framework that shapes who we are, how we respond, and the direction of our lives. When emotions rise or stress challenges our clarity, grounding ourselves in our values allows for measured responses instead of impulsive reactions. Reflecting on your values is not theoretical. It is practical, actionable, and transformative. It keeps you aligned with your principles, strengthens decision-making, and enhances personal and professional integrity. Start by identifying your core values. What do you truly stand for? Honesty, respect, compassion, perseverance, responsibility, or courage may be part of your framework. These are not labels you choose to impress others, but principles that genuinely guide your behavior. Clarity about your values provides a stable foundation for action. When confronted with conflict, criticism, or challenge, these values act as a compass. They guide how you respond, what you tolerate, and what you prioritize. Reflecting on values begins with awareness of the present moment. Before reacting to a situation, pause and ask, which of my principles are relevant here? This mental check slows the reaction, allowing thoughtfulness to replace impulsivity. Many people act immediately from emotion alone, which often leads to regret or escalation. Values-centered reflection ensures that your response is deliberate, measured, and consistent with who you want to be. Observe the alignment between actions and values. Are your responses consistent with what you believe? When you notice a gap, pause to recalibrate. Misalignment creates internal conflict, stress, and sometimes resentment. By regularly reflecting on values before responding, you ensure your actions strengthen your integrity rather than undermine it. This practice builds confidence because each decision affirms your commitment to your principles. It is helpful to create mental anchors for your values. When you face tension, remember phrases or statements that reinforce what matters most to you. For example, I respond with respect even under pressure, or I act from honesty and clarity. These anchors serve as reminders, guiding your thoughts and actions in alignment with your values. Over time, these internal cues become automatic, shaping behavior without conscious effort. Notice how emotions often pull us away from values. Anger, fear, and hurt can lead to impulsive reactions that contradict what we believe in. Reflecting on your values creates a pause between emotion and action. It allows you to nurture your feelings without letting them dictate behavior. Emotional intensity becomes manageable when filtered through the lens of personal principle. Observe recurring situations where values guide your best responses. Perhaps patience, empathy, or courage consistently produces better outcomes in conflicts. By noticing these patterns, you reinforce the connection between values and effective action. Reflection strengthens intuition, making it easier to respond constructively in future challenges. Each value-centered response builds momentum and confidence for the next. Write down your top values and consider how they manifest in daily life. How do they influence your decisions, interactions, and priorities? Writing provides clarity and reinforces awareness. When you encounter stressful or challenging situations, you can revisit these notes to ground yourself. This practice ensures that values are not abstract concepts, but practical guides for action. Recognize that values may sometimes conflict in specific situations. For example, honesty may challenge loyalty, or patience may conflict with urgency. Reflection allows you to weigh priorities and make measured choices. Decisions made consciously, with values in mind, produce outcomes you can respect, even if they are difficult. This internal alignment reduces stress and strengthens self-respect. Notice how external pressures can cloud judgment. Social expectations, peer pressure, or criticism may tempt you to act against your values. Reflecting on principles restores clarity. You act from your framework rather than reactionary influence. Values provide stability when external factors are unpredictable or challenging. This practice reinforces personal authority and emotional resilience. It is also important to evaluate outcomes after the fact. After responding to a situation, ask yourself whether your actions reflected your values. Analyze what went well and what could be improved. Reflection strengthens the feedback loop, helping you consistently act with integrity. Over time, your responses become more natural, confident, and aligned with your principles. Observe how stress affects value-based decision-making. When under pressure, it is easy to revert to old habits or impulsive reactions. Pausing and reflecting on values restores balance. Remind yourself what is most important, what you will respect about yourself afterward, and which choices align with your long-term vision. This practice transforms pressure from a trigger into an opportunity to strengthen character. Consider the role of empathy in value-based responses. Reflecting on values does not mean ignoring others' perspective. Compassion, understanding, and fairness often fall within many people's core principles. When responding thoughtfully, you balance personal integrity with consideration for others. This approach improves relationships, builds trust, and reduces unnecessary conflict. Notice patterns in emotional triggers that challenge your values. Certain situations, people, or criticisms may consistently provoke responses that feel misaligned with your principles. Identifying these patterns
allows for preemptive reflection. You can prepare mentally to act in ways consistent with your values, reducing stress and promoting constructive outcomes. Practice decision-making exercises focused on value. Review hypothetical or past scenarios and ask how you would respond if fully guided by principles rather than emotion or external pressure. This rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, making it easier to act consistently in real-life situations. The brain becomes trained to prioritize values, enhancing clarity and reducing reactive mistakes. Observe how values-centered responses influence others. Acting in alignment with principles inspires respect, trust, and confidence. When people notice that your words and actions reflect consistent integrity, relationships strengthen. Reflection on values benefits not only personal growth, but also social dynamics, communication, and leadership. Notice the connection between long-term goals and values. Short-term reactions often conflict with long-term priorities when emotions dominate. Reflecting on values allows you to evaluate choices based on their alignment with your vision, rather than momentary feeling. This perspective prevents regret, builds consistency, and fosters a sense of control over life's direction. It is helpful to create personal reminders or rituals for value reflection. This might include journaling, meditation, reviewing principles before meetings, or mentally rehearsing responses to common challenges. Rituals reinforce the habit of values-centered action, ensuring that clarity guides decision-making even in stressful moments. Notice the interplay between self-awareness and value reflection. Awareness of emotional states, triggers, and habitual reactions enhances the ability to act in alignment with principles. Pausing to assess your thoughts and feelings provides a bridge between emotion and value. This process strengthens emotional intelligence and improves outcomes in personal and professional context. Observe how reflection reduces reactive communication. Responding impulsively often leads to misunderstanding, conflict, and regret. Reflection on values allows measured responses that communicate clearly, assert boundaries, and express principles. Thoughtful action preserves relationships while maintaining integrity. Pausing to reflect becomes a habit that transforms reactive behavior into intentional, purpose-driven action. Notice how challenging situations test values. When faced with criticism, disrespect, or conflict, the opportunity to act according to principles is greatest. Reflection during these moments reinforces consistency and authenticity. Choosing actions guided by values rather than emotion builds confidence and reduces internal conflict. Each choice strengthens the foundation of character and resilience. Consider the long-term benefits of values-based reflection. Consistently acting in alignment with principles fosters self-respect, trustworthiness, and emotional stability. Over time, people around you learn to rely on your consistency, and your decisions become more effective and respected. Reflection transforms immediate challenges into stepping stones for personal growth and lifelong development. Observe that values are not static. They may evolve as you grow and learn. Regular reflection ensures that your actions remain aligned with your current principles. Updating and clarifying values as life changes maintains consistency and authenticity. This dynamic practice allows you to respond thoughtfully in any situation while remaining true to who you are. Notice how reflection strengthens confidence. When you respond according to values rather than impulse or external pressure, you build trust in yourself. Confidence grows from consistency, not from others' approval or reaction. This internal assurance creates stability in decision-making and emotional resilience. Confidence guided by principles allows for strategic, deliberate, and constructive action. Notice how reflection enhances clarity in complex situations. Many challenges are not purely emotional. They involve competing priorities, perspectives, or pressure. Pausing to reflect on values provides a lens for evaluation. It helps you identify what is most important, make decisions with integrity, and act without regret. Reflection ensures that clarity, rather than confusion or emotion, guides action. Observe how reflection fosters long-term growth. Acting impulsively may produce short-term relief or satisfaction, but often creates regret, stress, or conflict. Responding based on principles produces consistency, builds reputation, strengthens character, and reinforces emotional regulation. Each thoughtful response compounds over time, creating a life shaped by intention rather than reaction. Finally, understand that reflection on values is a practice, not a one-time exercise. Each day presents opportunities to pause, evaluate, and act deliberately. With consistent reflection, measured responses become habitual. Emotions are managed, relationships are strengthened, and personal integrity is preserved. Living according to values creates a life of purpose, clarity, and fulfillment. Reflection transforms instinctive reactions into strategic actions, allowing you to navigate challenges with wisdom, patience, and confidence. Acting from values rather than impulse ensures that every choice contributes to the life you want to create.
Chapter 9. Replace resentment with curiosity about others' behavior motives. Resentment is one of the heaviest burdens we carry in life. It can creep into our relationships, cloud judgment, and consume emotional energy. Most people don't realize that holding on to resentment is a choice, and that choice comes at a high cost. Every minute spent dwelling on resentment diverts focus from growth, clarity, and productive action. Replacing resentment with curiosity about why others act the way they do is a transformative practice. It allows you to shift from reactive frustration to understanding, from wasted energy to purposeful thought, and from emotional burden to emotional freedom. The first step is awareness. Notice when resentment arises. Pay attention to the tightness in your chest, the tension in your shoulders, or the negative loop of thoughts that keeps replaying. Recognizing resentment early is crucial because these patterns grow stronger when ignored. The moment you see it, you gain a choice. You can either let it control your perspective or redirect your mind toward curiosity. Curiosity begins with a simple question: why? Instead of fixating on the offense or perceived wrong, ask why the person acted that way. This is not about excusing behavior or denying impact. It is about seeking understanding. Every action stems from motives, experiences, beliefs, or pressures. People rarely act in isolation from their internal and external context. Asking why transforms resentment into an opportunity for insight and perspective. Observe how your mind reacts to resentment. Thoughts may replay conversations, exaggerate faults, or assign malicious intent. This mental pattern magnifies negative emotion and reinforces the burden. Curiosity interrupts this loop. By shifting attention to motives, you break the automatic chain of judgment. You move from feeling attacked to analyzing behavior, which fosters clarity and control. Recognize that resentment often builds when we assume that others' actions reflect our worth or fairness. Someone acts unfairly and we internalize it, believing it defines us or our value. This is a trap because their behavior says more about them than about you. Curiosity shifts focus from self-blame or offense to understanding their perspective. You step out of the reactive mindset and regain emotional autonomy. Begin practicing mental reframing. When a person frustrates you, pause and consider their background, pressures, or limitations. Were they stressed, misinformed, or influenced by their own fears? Asking these questions reduces the intensity of resentment and fosters empathy. This doesn't justify harm but creates mental space to moan thoughtfully, rather than react with bitterness. Notice how habitual resentment affects relationships.
Constantly holding grudges or replaying offenses erodes trust, communication, and connection. Curiosity changes the dynamic. When you genuinely seek to understand someone's motives, dialogue improves, conflicts are navigated more effectively, and relationships become more resilient. Empathy rooted in curiosity strengthens bonds rather than weakening them. Practice observing behavior objectively. Look at the facts of what occurred without the overlay of anger or personal judgment. Separate the actions from your emotional interpretation. This is the foundation for genuine curiosity. When your mind examines the situation with neutrality, you are able to ask meaningful questions and gain insight instead of being trapped in emotional reactivity. Notice that resentment consumes mental energy that could be applied to growth, creativity, and problem-solving. Every thought loop reinforcing anger diverts attention from productive work. Curiosity repurposes this energy. By focusing on motives and understanding, you engage your mind constructively. You redirect emotional intensity into observation, learning, and problem-solving, rather than dwelling on negativity. A practical approach is to imagine a dialogue with the person whose behavior triggered resentment. What pressures might they be facing? What assumptions could be influencing their choices? What experiences shaped their perspective? This imaginative exercise strengthens the habit of curiosity, allowing you to respond with insight rather than frustration. Notice how resentment often causes overgeneralization. One negative interaction becomes a narrative about a person or group. Curiosity prevents this mental distortion. By asking questions about motives and context, you examine the specific situation rather than projecting conclusions. This preserves objectivity, prevents unnecessary judgment, and reduces emotional burden. Recognize that curiosity enhances emotional intelligence. Understanding the reasons behind others' actions allows you to navigate relationships more skillfully. You respond rather than react, communicate more effectively, and maintain composure under pressure. Emotional intelligence is built not by suppressing feelings, but by consciously shifting perspective from offense to inquiry. Observe your internal dialogue. Are you reinforcing resentment with thoughts like, "They are always wrong," or "They meant to hurt me"? Replace these statements with questions. What might be influencing their behavior, or what pressures could be affecting them? This shift rewires thought patterns, gradually replacing resentment with constructive curiosity. Notice the role of assumptions in fueling resentment. Often we interpret behavior without evidence, projecting intent that may not exist. Curiosity requires pausing assumptions and seeking understanding. Ask yourself, what do I know for certain? What am I assuming? This process reduces emotional distortion and promotes rational, compassionate response. Practice self-reflection alongside curiosity. Examine why certain behaviors trigger resentment in you. Are personal values, expectations, or insecurity involved? Understanding your own reactions enhances emotional control and strengthens the ability to separate external actions from internal responses. The combination of self-awareness and curiosity creates resilience and clarity. Notice how curiosity fosters learning. Every person and situation becomes an opportunity to understand human behavior better. Instead of feeling victimized by someone's actions, you analyze patterns, motives, and context. This mindset transforms adversity into insight, making challenges a source of growth rather than frustration. Resentment becomes replaced with knowledge and perspective. Consider the practical effects of curiosity on problem solving. When resentment dominates, solutions are blocked by emotion. By replacing resentment with curiosity, you approach conflicts analytically. You ask questions, gather information, and explore alternative approaches. This mindset increases the likelihood of resolving issues effectively and maintaining healthy relationships. Notice the link between curiosity and forgiveness.
While curiosity does not require condoning harmful behavior, it opens the door for understanding and emotional release. By exploring motives, you reduce personal investment in anger. Forgiveness becomes easier because the mind is focused on comprehension rather than punishment. Curiosity and forgiveness are partners in reducing the weight of resentment. Observe that curiosity reduces personalizing behavior. Many resentments stem from interpreting others' actions as targeted attacks. By asking questions about motives, you recognize that behavior is often influenced by circumstances, beliefs, and pressures unrelated to you. This realization diminishes defensiveness and promotes emotional stability. Practice mindfulness to reinforce curiosity. When resentment arises, notice bodily sensations, thoughts, and emotions without judgment. Direct attention to questions about behavior rather than ruminating on offense. Mindfulness strengthens your capacity to remain present, respond intentionally, and maintain a calm investigative perspective. Notice how curiosity promotes empathy. Understanding motives allows you to feel compassion for struggles, pressures, or limitations of others. Empathy does not weaken your position. It strengthens relationships, reduces emotional conflict, and increases your ability to communicate effectively. Resentment blocks understanding, while curiosity opens the door to connection. Observe how habitual resentment can limit your potential. Lingering anger and fixation on perceived wrongs drain energy, reduce focus, and cloud judgment. Curiosity frees mental space. When energy is redirected toward understanding, insight, and strategy, personal growth accelerates. Life becomes focused on solutions and opportunities rather than grudges and frustration. Practice active listening. When discussing difficult topics, listen to understand motives rather than preparing rebuttals. Ask clarifying questions and reflect on what you hear. This practice strengthens curiosity, reduces misinterpretation, and enhances communication. Resentment often arises from misreading intentions. Careful listening prevents unnecessary emotional escalation. Notice that curiosity encourages humility. Recognizing that behavior is influenced by factors beyond your knowledge fosters an open mind. Humility reduces the need to control or judge others and replaces anger with thoughtful inquiry. The mind becomes adaptable, compassionate, and capable of measured response. Reflect on past experiences where resentment limited effectiveness. Perhaps anger caused conflict, closed opportunities, or damaged trust. By analyzing these moments and applying curiosity, you learn alternative approaches. Insight replaces frustration, and patterns of resentment are gradually replaced with understanding and strategic thinking. Notice that curiosity can transform conflicts into opportunities for learning. By asking questions about motives, context, and pressures, you gain knowledge about human behavior, communication, and problem solving. Challenges become lessons instead of sources of bitterness. Each situation strengthens emotional control, perspective, and resilience. Practice curiosity consistently. Each time resentment arises, intentionally shift to questioning motives. Over time, this becomes habitual. Your default response evolves from fixation on offense to exploration of understanding. Resentment diminishes naturally as curiosity takes its place, freeing emotional energy and increasing clarity of thought. Observe how curiosity fosters personal responsibility. When resentment dominates, it encourages blaming others for your emotional state. Curiosity shifts focus from blaming to understanding. You maintain control over your responses, reactions, and choices. This empowers you to act with integrity and purpose regardless of external behavior. Notice how curiosity improves long-term relationships. People respond positively when they sense interest, understanding, and thoughtful engagement, rather than judgment. Curiosity strengthens communication, builds trust, and reduces ongoing conflict. Relationships are preserved and enhanced when emotional energy is channeled toward understanding instead of resentment. Practice reflective questioning daily. After challenging interactions, ask, what might have influenced their behavior? What pressures were present? What assumptions am I making? This reflection strengthens the habit of curiosity, reduces emotional baggage, and builds perspective over time. The mind shifts from reaction to investigation, fostering clarity and emotional freedom. Notice that curiosity requires patience. Understanding motives may take time and repeated observation. The goal is not immediate answers, but a consistent approach to thinking with openness. Each instance of applying curiosity strengthens mental resilience, emotional intelligence, and the ability to respond thoughtfully, rather than reactively. Finally, understand that replacing resentment with curiosity transforms your life. Emotional energy is freed, relationships improve, clarity increases, and personal growth accelerates. Every moment of inquiry strengthens self-control and insight. Resentment diminishes because attention is focused on understanding rather than blame. Curiosity becomes a lens through which you navigate challenges, respond with wisdom, and maintain emotional stability. This practice is a cornerstone of personal mastery, emotional freedom, and a life guided by thoughtful action rather than reactive frustration.
Chapter 10. Train your mind to respond with awareness and choice. The most powerful skill you can develop is the ability to respond consciously rather than react automatically. Every day presents moments where your emotions, impulses, and external pressures tempt you to act without thought. Without awareness, these moments dictate your life, shaping outcomes that may not align with your goals, values, or long-term well-being. Training your mind to respond with awareness and choice is a practice that transforms every area of your life. It empowers you to act intentionally, preserve emotional stability, and create results that reflect your principles rather than external influence. Begin by understanding that most reactions are conditioned from childhood, society, and past experiences. Your mind has learned patterns of automatic responses. You react to stress, criticism, and conflict without pause because repetition has trained these neural pathways. Awareness is the first step in breaking automatic reaction. When you notice that you are reacting before thinking, you reclaim control. This conscious observation is not judgment, it is recognition that allows change. Awareness starts with presence. In every moment, bring attention to your thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. Notice how your body reacts under pressure, tension in your shoulders, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, or tightness in your chest. These signals indicate that a response is forming. Recognizing the physiological signs of emotional escalation is a foundation for conscious choice. The moment you are present, you interrupt the autopilot and open the door to intentional action. Next, practice creating a pause. Even a brief moment between stimulus and response allows the mind to engage rational thinking. This pause can be as simple as taking a slow, deep breath, counting silently, or observing your surroundings. The pause is a buffer that separates instinct from deliberation. It gives your mind a chance to evaluate options rather than defaulting to habitual reaction. Over time, this pause becomes instinctive, allowing awareness to lead every response. Train the mind to question impulses. Before reacting, ask, does this response align with my goals, values, and long-term outcomes? This question shifts focus from immediate emotion to deliberate choice. Most regrettable actions occur because reactions are guided solely by feelings. When you ask this question consistently, you retrain your brain to prioritize intention over impulse. This practice transforms your emotional life from chaos to mastery. Observe patterns of past behavior.
Identify situations where automatic reactions caused negative outcomes. Perhaps you raised your voice in frustration, acted defensively in disagreement, or avoided action due to fear. Awareness of these patterns is crucial because it allows proactive preparation. You begin to see triggers, anticipate reactions, and apply conscious choice before old habits dictate action. Reflection strengthens learning and reinforces intentional behavior. It is helpful to use mindful breathing as a tool for awareness. Focusing on each inhalation and exhalation draws attention to the present and reduces mental noise. Breath anchors the mind when emotions threaten to take over. It signals to the nervous system that it is safe to slow down, allowing rational thought to guide response. Over time, the practice of mindful breathing strengthens the ability to respond deliberately in high-pressure situations. Recognize that emotions themselves are not the enemy. Anger, fear, frustration, and sadness are natural signals. The challenge lies in responding to them consciously. Awareness allows you to observe these emotions without judgment or attachment. You acknowledge feelings without letting them dictate action. Emotional intelligence grows when the mind is trained to notice emotion and choose response rather than being driven by it. Practice setting internal cues for conscious response. Create mental reminders such as pause, observe and choose, or act from clarity, not impulse. These cues serve as anchors in stressful moments, signaling your mind to switch from automatic reaction to deliberate response. Repetition embeds these cues into your mental processes, gradually making intentional responses instinctive. Notice how external pressures influence automatic reactions. Criticism, conflict, deadlines, or social expectations can trigger defensive or reactive behavior. Awareness allows you to identify these influences and evaluate them rationally. You decide how much weight to assign to external input and how to respond in alignment with your own principles. This reduces vulnerability to manipulation, miscommunication, and unnecessary stress. It is important to cultivate curiosity alongside awareness. When impulses arise, ask yourself, what is driving this reaction? What beliefs or assumptions are influencing my thoughts? Curiosity prevents judgmental or self-critical responses and creates space for understanding. Understanding your internal triggers enhances the ability to respond thoughtfully, creating freedom from repetitive patterns of reaction. Train the mind through visualization exercise. Imagine situations that typically provoke strong reactions and mentally rehearse responding with awareness and choice. Picture yourself pausing, assessing the situation, and acting according to principles rather than emotion. Visualization strengthens neural pathways for intentional behavior and prepares the mind to respond consistently in real-life scenarios. Notice how conscious response strengthens relationships. Reacting impulsively can damage communication, trust, and credibility. Responding intentionally fosters understanding, effective dialogue, and collaboration. Awareness allows you to listen fully, respond respectfully, and maintain composure under pressure. Measured responses create connection rather than conflict, influence rather than irritation, and clarity rather than chaos. Observe how thought patterns influence reactions. Automatic thoughts often escalate emotions or distort reality. Awareness allows you to identify these patterns. You can challenge assumptions, evaluate facts, and choose a response based on reasoning rather than impulse. This practice reduces mental noise, improves decision-making, and strengthens emotional resilience. Notice how awareness increases self-respect. Each deliberate choice reinforces the understanding that your behavior is guided by principle rather than habit or external pressure. Confidence grows when you see yourself responding thoughtfully, maintaining integrity, and achieving outcomes aligned with value. Self-respect is both the result and reinforcement of intentional action. Practice reflective journaling to reinforce awareness and choice.
Document situations where you reacted impulsively and analyze how conscious response could have altered the outcome. Write down strategies for future encounters and lessons learned. Journaling strengthens mental discipline, reinforces intentional behavior, and creates a record of growth over time. Notice that consistent practice builds mental resilience. The more you respond consciously, the less reactive you become to stress, criticism, or provocation. Awareness reduces vulnerability to emotional hijacking, while choice strengthens control over outcome. This resilience allows you to navigate challenges with clarity, patience, and strategic thinking. Practice deliberate language in communication. Words spoken in impulsive moments often lead to misunderstanding, conflict, or regret. Awareness allows you to pause, consider intent, and choose phrasing that communicates clearly and effectively. Thoughtful responses preserve relationships, strengthen influence, and prevent unnecessary confrontation. Observe how conscious response impacts long-term outcome. Impulsive reactions may provide temporary relief, but often create future problems. Responding with awareness and choice ensures decisions are aligned with goals, values, and priorities. Each measured response compounds over time, building reputation, credibility, and emotional stability. Notice that awareness strengthens adaptability. Life is unpredictable, and challenges arise constantly. Automatic reactions are rigid and often ineffective. Awareness provides flexibility, allowing assessment of each situation individually. You can adjust your response to circumstances without compromising principles, maintaining control and effectiveness. It is helpful to develop a daily practice of self-checks. Periodically throughout the day, pause to assess emotional state, thoughts, and intention. Ask whether current reactions are automatic or deliberate. This reinforces the habit of awareness, strengthens mental discipline, and prepares the mind to respond intentionally under pressure. Notice how awareness enhances problem-solving. Impulsive reactions focus on immediate emotion rather than effective solutions. Conscious response allows evaluation of options, consideration of consequences, and strategic action. Awareness transforms challenges from sources of stress into opportunities for thoughtful, productive outcome. Observe the role of reflection in reinforcing choice. After each significant encounter or decision, review your response. Evaluate alignment with values, effectiveness, and areas for improvement. Reflection strengthens awareness, creates a feedback loop for growth, and trains the mind to respond even more effectively in the future. Practice integrating breathing techniques with mental pause. In stressful moments, slow, deliberate breathing stabilizes the nervous system and creates space for rational thinking. Breathing combined with awareness allows emotional regulation and ensures that actions reflect choice rather than impulse. This combination is powerful, accessible, and immediately applicable. Notice that awareness reduces regret. Each time you pause and respond intentionally, the likelihood of later wishing you had acted differently diminishes. Your actions align with values, priorities, and objectives. The mind gains confidence in its ability to navigate challenges without being hijacked by reactive impulses. Observe how conscious response enhances leadership. People naturally trust and respect those who act deliberately, remain calm under pressure, and make decisions thoughtfully. Awareness and choice are not only personal tools, they are leadership qualities that influence others positively and create environments of stability, clarity, and respect. Practice identifying triggers that provoke automatic reaction. Awareness of these triggers allows preparation and proactive application of deliberate response. You can anticipate stressors, plan strategies, and maintain composure even in difficult circumstances. This preparation reduces emotional volatility and strengthens control over outcome. Notice that awareness fosters patience. Impulsive reactions often stem from impatience, frustration, or desire for immediate resolution. Pausing to observe and choose cultivates patience, allowing you to navigate challenges thoughtfully and strategically. Patience becomes a habit that supports emotional intelligence and effective decision-making. Reflect on the cumulative benefits of training your mind. Each instance of awareness and choice builds discipline, strengthens character, enhances relationships, and improves outcome. Over time, responding with conscious intention becomes second nature. Emotional energy is preserved, judgment improves, and life becomes more predictable, purposeful, and fulfilling. Finally, understand that training the mind to respond with awareness and choice is a lifelong practice. Life will continue to present challenges, stresses, and moments of high emotion. The difference is that each time you pause, observe, and choose, you strengthen the skill. Awareness becomes automatic, choice becomes habitual, and you experience life from a position of control, clarity, and intentionality. This practice transforms reactive living into strategic, empowered, and purposeful action, creating a life defined by deliberate decisions rather than circumstances or impulses.